And welcome back to Reunited States, the podcast where we work to build bridges and bring civility back to our national discourse. From Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And this week, there's a lot that we could talk about, but we have to start off addressing the big breaking news of the last couple of days, which is Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. He issued a pardon and a justification for it over the weekend that has created plenty of controversy, per se. And so we actually started out and put this to you on social media. We put a poll up to see where you, our listeners, were on this issue. So we just asked, should President Biden have pardoned his son? And the results are interesting. We got 58% said yes, 26% said no, and 16% said unsure. So we also took some quotes from some of you that I want to incorporate here that give kind of the various perspectives. We have, quote, "I think it's only natural, but he should have been honest about this earlier in the year," end quote. We have, quote, "No, but also if I was the prez, I would have done the same thing, father to son," end quote. I think that makes a lot of sense. Another person said, "It's his son and the charge was nonsense." I don't know how I feel about the charge being nonsense, but we'll get into that.
It is his son, though. That's irrefutable.
It is definitely his son. That is true, or at least we hope so. It certainly looks like him. And the bald spot is in the same place. So we have, quote, "because the next president is a felon and Hunter was actually the victim of a witch hunt," end quote. Again, I'm not sure about the witch hunt thing. Yes, in some capacity, but also no in some capacity. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, the issue I have with that is it kind of feels like that means that this pardon is like retaliatory. And that's the thing that I'm like, I hope it's not. That's the thing I hope it's not. I hope it's not retaliation. Because it could be. This person could be right, but I'd really hope that's not the idea that we're taking into this, that it's a retaliatory statement.
Right.
I know we mentioned this last week on the pod with his nomination of Kamala being some sort of retaliation to...
Yeah, a middle finger to Pelosi and Obama, yeah.
And I just hope this is not... I hope this is not that same cloth.
Well, I'm going to touch on this in a little bit as well here. Here's some other quotes we got. Quote, "Biden is a father who had a crazy, unique opportunity to pardon his own son. Hard to see any other parent doing anything different. I am disappointed he went back on his word after doubling down on it time and time again. Maybe it was naive of me to have believed him, but I did think it was really honorable of Joe Biden to avoid pardoning him. However, ultimately, Trump won and won by a lot, so if I was Joe Biden, I'd probably also be like, fuck 'em all and pardon my son. I guess I'm also bummed because it feels like it gives Republicans more fuel to say Biden is terrible, which I don't think he really is," end quote. It's an interesting take there. We have, quote, "I've long said the Democrats need to start acting like Republicans to get anything done, but I don't think Joe pardoning Hunter is it. I may need someone to explain to me why Joe would do this unless he thinks he really has nothing to lose," end quote. I mean, I would say he thinks he has nothing to lose. He's 80-something years old. I assume he does not want to see his son through visitation hours for the foreseeable future. We have, quote, "Honestly, if I were him, I would do it too. If Kamala won, I don't think he would have, but at this point his career is done and she will have 4 years to separate himself from her, and it's his fucking son, LOL." End quote.
I mean, yeah.
Now, here's where we had some people who were very angry. This is one of the ones that I picked up here. Because there were a lot of people on the left, certainly on the right, but there were a lot of people on the left who were very angry about this. We have, quote, "Disaster. Even if we accept that Biden's decision is the only decision a loving father can make, even if we accept that everything he says about the politics of the verdict is true, a large part of the case against Donald Trump is that we are a nation of laws, and no one is above the law. President Biden has just demonstrated in the plainest possible terms that Trump is right, that legal verdicts don't matter, that law doesn't matter, that the only relevant fact is power, and he's doing it at quite possibly the worst imaginable moment. The message he is sending is that Democrats are full of shit when they talk about their reasons for holding Trump accountable. It's the worst decision of his presidency, and it reinforces every supposedly false belief independent voters have about the hypocrisy of the left. Disaster. Unmitigated. I'm personally furious. End quote. Wow. I know a lot of people feel that way about this, and I think there's a lot of that is valid. But I'm curious about your takes, Tyler. What do you think? Should Biden have pardoned his son? And if so, why?
Here's where I'm at. The president has the power to pardon people. He does. Every president does. It's written into the Constitution of our very country. If pardoning power was seen as some awful abuse of power or inappropriate ability that was granted to the presidency, well, I find it funny that no one's really said anything about it until now, all of a sudden. You know, it's not like the Supreme Court sees cases on this all the time or made notable efforts to remove it or anything similar to that. Presidential pardons are a normal part of a president's end to their tenure. And for some reason, no one's really made a big deal about it until now. And I understand that it might be emotionally fueled for me personally, but that is my take. Because at the end of the day, that's all this is. I hear a lot of people saying that Hunter should suffer the consequences of his actions. And yeah, maybe he should. Everyone should suffer the consequences of their actions, no matter how rich or powerful or how many friends they might have. But lots of people get away with committing crimes. That's the reality of it. Trump is about to get away with 96 of them. And so too did all the people pardoned by presidents since the birth of our nation. And you know what? It seems a little hypocritical to focus on this one person when it happens like every 4 years. I mean, presidents pardoned themselves. Whatever, I digress. I understand that the argument against what I just said is that, you know, in this instance it's different. It's a family member. The president has the power to pardon people. Joe Biden is a lame duck president and has nothing to lose. Somebody said earlier, and they're right, he does have nothing to lose. He has no reason to save face. So why wouldn't he help his son? He's retiring effectively at the end of his presidency term. He's not really going to be doing much in politics, I don't imagine, after
until this. He runs again.
Oh, yeah, until he somehow runs again. But something tells me he probably won't. But it's like, why wouldn't he? You know, I work in HR and I have almost my entire career. And to me, this is the same as like the guy who announced his retirement and now is going to run through all of his sick time, even though you know he's not really sick. Because why wouldn't he? It's going to expire. He's not going to get paid out for it. So why wouldn't he use up all of his sick time and all of his other compensated time off so that he can take the maximum benefit from the last lame duck period of his or her career? Joe Biden's doing the same thing here. He's about to leave. He has no reason to save face in front of you and not use his power to, again, help his son. Because why wouldn't he? What father wouldn't do anything in his power to help his son, even when they screw up? I know I would. I'm not saying I wouldn't allow my son to face the consequences of his actions. Kids need to learn to suffer consequences, of course. But I sure as hell will do anything, and I do mean anything, in my power to keep my son out of fucking prison. That's different than saying like, oh yeah, you deserve a slap on the wrist, you deserve, a fine or whatever. It's different. It's very, very, very different. And Joe Biden doing the same thing here just tells me that he's the same kind of parent and the same kind of father. The kind that cares about the well-being of his son and maybe, just maybe, doesn't want to see his son in prison rags and handcuffs. Parenting is hard, and sometimes no decision is the right one. But I challenge any parent in Joe Biden's position to make a different decision, take a different course of action when you are staring your son in the eye as he is a pen stroke away, your pen stroke away, from either a prison sentence or freedom. I get it. It's a tough decision, but he decided to be a parent. Him wielding all the power in the country, all the power in the world, decided right now I can be the president in the lame duck period of the last part of my political career, or I can be a dad. And he decided, I'm going to be a dad. Fuck it. And you know what? Good on you, man. Good on you. Be a dad. I'd be a dad too.
I think that that's a fair perspective on this. I'm more conflicted about this. This has obviously stirred up criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. And Republicans are decrying it as corruption. And then there's, some pearl-clutching liberals arguing that the move, quote, opens a door, end quote, for Donald Trump, as if Trump hasn't spent his entire career bulldozing through any semblance of respect for the rule of law. Like, that's the one argument that I find rather silly from liberals who are saying that, this opens the door for Trump. Do you think that Trump is really going to have less respect for the rule of law because of this? Is that what we're worried about? Trump doesn't need Biden's pardon to justify his actions. He has already proven time and time again that his behavior operates in its own sphere of self-interest, completely untethered from precedent or accountability. That said, the justification behind this pardon bothers me. And not because I don't think Hunter Biden, didn't deserve a pardon. Was he the target of political persecution? Absolutely. Was it a witch hunt? Not exactly, again, in my opinion, because he did commit the crime that he was charged with. The crimes, I should say, that he was charged with. With that being said, let's not kid ourselves. If his last name weren't Biden, he would not have been facing jail time for these crimes. So in that context, the pardon isn't just defensible, it's humane. But what troubles me is this broader picture that this decision paints of President Biden himself. And it underscores the fatal flaw that has brought us to this point, which is his ego. And I know people are saying, what does Hunter have to do with Biden's ego? But Hunter Biden, Joe has stood up for him repeatedly, as any father would of their son, but has also not distanced himself in the way he needed to. Why has Hunter Biden been involved in the decision-making process over whether why was he in the West Wing when Joe Biden was trying to decide whether he was going to continue to run or not, or how to move forward after the disastrous debate performance? Hunter Biden has not shown great judgment. Throughout his life, and certainly over the last 10 to 12 years. He has literally posted pictures of himself doing illegal things. And before people say, you have empathy for him, he's an addict. You don't need to question my empathy for addicts. As one myself, as a recovered addict, I have an immense amount of empathy towards that. And again, I do think that pardoning him is a humane act, especially because so much of this was taking place while he was under the addiction. I would say, and I would encourage the president to now look at the thousands of other proposals for pardons of nonviolent offenders or people who are in prison because of addiction. So I would encourage him to do that and use that power liberally throughout the remainder of his term. But this all goes back to my frustration with Biden's ego. And this dates back to him running in the first place. If Biden had stepped aside when he should have, if he hadn't been defensive and frankly butthurt about the criticism he faced after his struggles in the debate this year, we might not be in this crisis today. And again, I think he should have quit long before the debate. And while I was effusive with praise over his decision to drop out of the race, which was the right decision, it came a year too late. And if you think back to his convention speech, it was all about him, his legacy. So little about Kamala. It was almost striking how little there was about Kamala in his speech. And in some ways he deserved that moment, but it's indicative of how he has behaved for much of the second half of his presidency. His determination to prove himself, to hold on to the reins of power, has led to a series of decisions that now weigh very heavily on his presidential legacy and on our nation. So the pardon of Hunter Biden was not the problem. The problem is the pattern it represents of a president who, in my opinion, has too often allowed his personal instincts to override the greater good. And we should be honest about that. We're not here because of one pardon, but because of a series of choices driven more by ego than strategic foresight. In short, it simply doesn't feel like Biden has consistently put the country over his own ego at times in the last couple years. And I can't help but think that that's at least partially a product of his age. So yeah, the attacks on Hunter Biden were unfair. But yes, the pardon was justified. But the explanation behind it was just yet another reminder of how Biden's inability to step aside gracefully has been his Achilles heel, and now we're going to face the consequences of that stubbornness, not just in the election, but yes, there are going to be justifications for using the pardon power for even more ridiculous things going forward. And I just look at his response and his justification. He said, "No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough." I mean, yeah, but he was tried in a court of law with a jury. The jury found him guilty because he was guilty of the case. Now, again, do I think he should go to jail? Is that normal? No. But also in trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. By doing this, you're admitting that they were right. That they succeeded. That they won. And so, yeah, I get it. I understand. I'm not saying he shouldn't have done it. I really wish we weren't in the situation where he needed to do it now. It would have been so much better if he had decided not to run for re-election, if we hadn't seen this repetitive trend of behavior that is largely kind of self-interested. So that's my take on it. Yeah, I support the pardon. I don't feel great about it, and I don't think a lot of us feel great about it. But we do need to move on to the nomination of the FBI director. Well, we say the nomination. Basically, Trump is saying he's going to fire another FBI director. Remember, the last time he did that was James Comey. That's a big deal. FBI directors are not just supposed to be fired upon the entrance. There's a reason why they have 10-year terms. And Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, Trump doesn't like him because, he's a stand-up guy who actually, again, he's a Republican. This is the thing. Like, James Comey, Christopher Wray, they're all Republicans. But Trump doesn't like them because they believe in the rule of law and they're not loyal to him. And that's what he wants in an FBI director.
Mm-hmm. And newsflash, yeah, Trump doesn't care about party affiliation. That should be very apparent to anyone who has followed his political career. Trump can give less of a rat's ass about your political affiliation. Hell, his political affiliation swapped like 3 times at least before becoming the president. He doesn't care about that. He only cares about loyalty. That's all that matters to him.
Yes.
If Nancy Pelosi decided today that she was going to be wholly loyal to Donald Trump, he'd be like, all right, cool. Guess you're on my side now. Like, that's all that really matters to him.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's a great point. And so you have this guy, Kash Patel, that he has nominated, which raises some significant concerns due to his, to put it mildly, controversial background and statements. He is, of course, a staunch Trump loyalist. Patel has promoted baseless conspiracy theories, claims of election fraud in 2020.
Yeah, Kash Patel, he did serve under Donald Trump in the first presidency. More minor roles. He was a chief of staff to then Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller and a senior advisor to the acting director of national intelligence. And he was also an aide to Devin Nunes, who was then the House Intelligence Committee chair. He does have a history working in similar factions under the Trump presidency before, but I think the most concerning part of his, I say most concerning, there's a lot of concerning things about his history, but one of the more concerning things about his recent political history is his involvement in the Ukraine scandal. If you don't recall, this was when Trump allegedly was withholding funds to Ukraine in exchange for dirt on Joe Biden. In this, it was believed that Trump had a what they call like a secret or a secret line of communication that was outside of the normal lines of communication with the Ukrainian government. Lev Parnas, Rudy Giuliani were heavily involved in this secret communication. But there was another person who was part of this link, this communication link, and that was Kash Patel. It was believed that Kash Patel was the person directly communicating with Rudy Giuliani, had multiple very long phone calls in which it was suspected that these communications were regarding the deal, the underhanded deal that Trump was trying to make on getting dirt on Joe Biden. He was appointed to Trump's National Security Council. This was seen as very questionable given his background. They didn't believe his background to be really qualifying for the position, which already raised flags. And Trump had referred to him as his top Ukraine policy specialist. Patel needed to be readily available to discuss important related documents to Ukraine with Trump. That's what created this entire informal information channel involving Rudy Giuliani with the Ukrainian government. And he was central to that entire alleged communications with the country. But since then, he's been involved heavily in Trump's dealings and spreading QAnon conspiracy theories.
To me, the most disturbing thing about him was what he's actually said about the FBI. He said that this was back when it was purely theoretical, he said that if he were to be in charge of the FBI, he would, quote, shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopen it the next day as a museum of the deep state, end quote. That should be very scary, guys. I mean, this is where, it's really scary. The FBI, you know what they're capable of. You know the information that they have on everyone. It is a trust in this system that has allowed the FBI to continue to do the good work that they do and the important work that they do to keep Americans safe. This guy and this belief that the FBI has it out for people like Trump, has it out for conservatives, which is crazy because, again, so many of them historically have been Republicans, like conservative Republicans. That's been the FBI's bread and butter. This deep state argument is really dangerous. The conspiracy theories that exist relating to that are really dangerous. I don't know if this guy's going to be able to get past Senate confirmation, but I do want to just mention how crazy it is that we're not even talking about the fact that Trump wants to fire the current FBI director. An action which in and of itself with any previous president would have been a major news story, headline. It would be a gigantic controversy. But with Trump, it's just yeah, of course he does. He wants to fire him. He wants his own guy in there because he does not believe that the Justice Department should be an independent branch. He believes it should be an arm of the presidency. And that's the biggest danger outside of democracy that we're facing in the coming years, and they're kind of interrelated. So, yeah, I'm concerned.
And, it's not just us either. We're not the only people who think that this guy is a very, very bad deal. Senior government officials are very scared of this. Ex-Attorney General William Barr wrote in his memoir that Patel would become FBI director only, and I quote, over his dead body.
Yeah, this is disturbing. We've said this about so many of these nominees. Who knows how many of them are going to get through, but he certainly has a chance, and Trump really wants him in that position. So with that, should we transition over into our favorite segment, things we can all agree on?
No, we should not, because there is one thing about Kesh Patel that I really want to mention. Amongst all the QAnon conspiracy theory that he very, very famously loves to push, he is the author of not one, not two, but 3 children's books talking all about King Trump and how he was ousted by the evil Hillary Queenton. That is actually how they refer to Hillary Queenton. But he bested her. He bested Hillary Queenton because the people spoke out and they said that King Trump was the right choice. This is a literal children's book.
And we're worried about Drag Queen Story Hour.
The book trilogy is called The Plot Against the King. And it's a book in 3 parts. The first book is all about the 2016 election and how this great, amazing man called King Donald overtook Hillary Queenton. Yes, you heard that right. Hillary Queenton. And, of course, the main character, the main savior of all 3 of these books, I believe, is, in fact, Patel himself, who he has inserted into the book as a wizard, whom he calls himself the Distinguished Discoverer. I am making literally none of this up. The second book, it's so bad. The second book, The Plot Against the King 2, 2,000 Mules, is, you might guessed it, yes, all about the big lie. All about how King Trump won re-election. Yes, that is an oxymoron. A king won an election for some reason in this book. I don't know.
This is ridiculous.
The guy isn't exactly bright or knows what a monarchy is. But no, King Trump won the election, but no, it was taken away from him. It was stolen from him by, you guessed it, King Biden. But I'm sorry, it's not King Biden. He actually does call him Sleepy Joe. Donald Trump has said, and I quote, "This book should be in every school in the country." Talking about the sequel to The Plot Against the King. And of course, there is a third book in this series, and that is called The Plot Against the King 3, The Return of the King. And boy, do I wish that did not have the same title as the third Lord of the Rings book. But yes, The Return of the King. He has defeated the evil, and God, do I wish this was fake, the evil Kami-la-la-la. That is in fact Kamala's name in this children's novel for very, very young kids. Yeah. So I'm not gonna harp on this too much. I think you've heard enough of Comey's spying slugs and all this other nonsense that is in this book. But I will leave you with a review that I found on Amazon for the first 2 novels. And this is a review by this individual named Brandon. Remember, folks, don't play their game. Play your own game. Keeping 1 foot in this matrix and 1 foot out. Everything we've been taught in school growing up, from history to our so-called globe, Earth, has been lies. History. His story. We've been so proud. We've been so programmed starting at a very young age. But the good news is people are waking up more and more every day. Question everything and do your own research. Use critical thinking and common sense. Stop watching the CIA Mockingbird media platforms. That includes Fox, owned by 6 large corporations with an agenda. Their agenda for the masses is to confuse and divide us, pushing propaganda daily, playing with our emotions. Stop it! Finding the truth may require following independent researchers and journalists. We must stay united, because divided we fall. Our children deserve better. Stay safe, and God bless. FYI, space is fake. Technology has caught up with NASA lies. Check out the Nikon P90. Check out the... I can't keep it straight. Check out the Nikon P900 and P1000 vids of the luminaries in the waters above. Also, watch long distances videos with the P900 and 1000 camera. If there was actual curvature on this Earth, it would be impossible to see the objects at those distances. Wake up, America! That's a real review. That's a review for a kid's book.
My favorite part in the middle is the stop it. Because
stop it.
Yes, that's how I feel about you, sir. Just stop it.
Stop it, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. All right. Now we are going on. There is no question. We're going on to things we can all agree on. And I'm going to start this week. I'm going to start because, we just finished Thanksgiving. And I want to talk about Giving Tuesday, the annual tradition where society collectively says, okay, folks, we've just spent a week lighting our wallets on fire for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but now it's time to remember, charity is important. Because nothing says, give what you can to those in need, like asking us to do it with the $5 we have left after buying an Instant Pot, a 75-inch TV, and a pair of novelty socks we'll never wear. Can we talk about Black Friday? It's not even a day anymore. It's Black Friday week, and I left in the Friday because otherwise it's just Black Week, and that's not something that we're talking about. Some places are out here starting Black Friday in October. Why even call it Friday if it's just a season now? Are we going to have Black Friday pumpkin spice lattes next? And then there's Cyber Monday, which sounds terrifying, by the way. I've always thought it's like Cyber Monday, which honestly feels a bit unnecessary at this point because let's be real, everything is online. The same deal I wrestled a grandma for at 5 a.m. on Friday was quietly sitting in my Amazon cart all weekend. And now I'm supposed to feel good about saving $20 on a toaster oven while being gently guilt-tripped into donating to a cause on Tuesday. Can we count on you for just $10 this Giving Tuesday? Oh, sure. Let me just check the bank account I drained on things I don't need. Insufficient funds. Yep, thought so. And here's the kicker. This is all happening in a country that loves to complain. The economy's in shambles. Every other day it's, oh no, inflation, or we're heading for a recession. But then November hits and suddenly everybody's throwing money around like we're contestants on The Price is Right. Like, explain this to me. How can we be so broke but also willing to drop $1,000 on a doorbell camera with a built-in latte maker? Like, do you know what that says about us? It says we're bad at priorities. It says we'll fight tooth and nail to save $5 on a set of steak knives, but when the cashier says, would you like to round up for charity, we're like, nah, I'm good. Don't even get me started on what we're buying. Look, if you're listening, I want you to think about your home. Do you have an air fryer collecting dust in your kitchen? What about a high-tech workout gadget you swore you'd use but haven't touched since January? We're not shopping for the holidays, we're shopping for the landfill. Meanwhile, Giving Tuesday's over here like, hey, we know you just blew your rent money on a talking refrigerator, but how about donating to save the rainforest? Sorry, rainforest. I care. I really do. But capitalism beat you to it. Try me again in January when my credit card stops weeping. You know what's wild about this, though? All jokes aside, we're not even bad people. We want to be generous, but it's hard to feel generous when we've been conditioned to think that the holidays are about stuff. And not just stuff for others, stuff for ourselves. And maybe that's the real problem. We don't need a Giving Tuesday. We need a giving mindset. A way to remember that giving isn't just what you do when the sales end, it's how we make the world suck a little less. So here's my Giving Tuesday resolution. I'm donating, not money, I don't have any left. But time, energy, I've got those. And next year, when Black Friday rolls around, I'm skipping it. No 5 a.m. lines, no impulse buys, no air fryer. Unless it's 70% off, then we'll talk.
All right. Well, I have a very different things we can all agree on. And this has to do with movies. When did we determine that all these, big, large-scale movies need to be, 3 hours long and in multiple parts? This is just becoming wholly unnecessary. It's ridiculous, and it's like a cash grab. 3+ hours, first off, is already way too long for a feature film. Looking at you, Martin Scorsese. And making multiple parts in length, meaning the narrative is halfway done by the end of a single movie, and having to wait 1 to 2 to 3 years for the next part, is a bit ridiculous. It's a waste of our time. It takes away from the enjoyment of watching a story unfold in one condensed, nice sitting. This comes from me seeing Wicked in theaters yesterday, which Wicked was great, by the way. And yes, Wicked is a 2-part film. But Wicked isn't actually the reason I wanted to make this point today. I actually think that Wicked is in the vast minority of 2-part films, and that warrant, so far at least, warrant being split up due to the sheer density of necessary plot points and music in the original story that needs to be a part of the film, or otherwise you'd be losing something wholly necessary to the characters and to the overall plot. You look at the last 2 Harry Potter films, I think is another good example of that being necessary. No. This came to mind because right before Wicked started, I was shown the trailer for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2, which is no longer called that. It's now being rebranded as Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. And now this makes no sense. This is precisely the type of film that was split into 2 parts solely for commercial gain. And that needs to stop. Clearly, the directors or writers had no intention of making it this way because the second part of the story isn't even called Part 2 anymore. So calling the first one Part 1 is quite literally not necessary. So now we're here and we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and its sequel, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. There is no Dead Reckoning Part 2. People are going to watch this series in like 10 years and watch Dead Reckoning Part 1 and think, am I missing a movie? Because I don't see Part 2 anywhere. I just see Final Reckoning. Is that supposed to be Part 2? That doesn't make any sense. It's confusing as it is stupid. It's the perfect example of executives trying to push this multi-part film thing in an effort to get more money. And the people who suffer, of course, the writers and directors have to manage all this nonsense, but also the audience who now have to remember the events of like a 3-year-old movie just to enjoy one over the holiday season. I digress. It's unnecessary. I wish there was something we can do to help curve this trend with film. They've got to be shorter.
Look, I have to admit, I'm amused by your unadulterated loathing of these 2-part films. Look, it's not anyone's fault that these stories are popular enough to sell out theaters for 2 films. And you're right. No one mourns the wicked producers that make these decisions, but so many of these films continue to defy gravity because consumers are willing to spend the extra money on a second film.
Yeah, well, unless you're Divergent.
No.
Because that second film got canceled because the first one, the part 1 of the last film, was so terrible.
Yeah.
So no, not all the time, but you're right. People will continue to spend money, and it continues to make money, which is why the 2-part trend continues. With that, I think we'll put a stop to our incessant rambling for the week. As always, I hope you guys had a great time today. I know we did. And if you like to continue to support us, please follow us on Instagram at ReunitedStatesPod. But with that, thanks so much. If you guys have any suggestions, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you guys like our takes, tell us you like it. If you guys don't like our takes, all the more reason, please tell us how you don't like them. We love interacting with you guys. We love answering your questions, bringing your ideas onto the pod, onto these episodes. It makes them a lot more engaging and a lot more fun. But with that, from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And from Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
And this has been Reunited States.
When the whole world has got you down, and there's no one else around, turn that frown right upside